Okay, good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube, just Daf It. Today we begin a new week, Nazir, Daf Chav Zayin, everyone's favorite Masechta. We continue um, talking about Korbanos, everyone's favorite. If you become a Nazir, my brother-in-law asked me if there's any Nazirim nowadays, if people are actually Nazirim. And my father-in-law was a Rebbe at Neve, which is Yeshiva for guys that sort of were on the Derech, went off the Derech. So I said, you go to Yeshivas Neve Tzion, you'll see a lot of Nazirim because a lot of them have long hair. It was a joke. All right, so really becoming a Nazir maybe is a mitzvah, probably not a mitzvah. Doesn't really apply nowadays, and certainly the Karmanos wouldn't apply nowadays, even if someone was a Nazir, because we have no Beis Hamikdash. But one day, hopefully, the Beis Hamikdash will be rebuilt, and if there technically is a mitzvah of a Nazir, which I believe there is under certain circumstances, a Stam Naziris, then maybe the Karbanos would be applicable. Let's start from the middle of Chavam and Beis, about 6 lines from the bottom. Amalei Rav Simi Barashi Rav Papa. Simi Barashi Rav Papa. Mai Tamayu Rabbanan. The Amri Mos v'lo Behema v'lo Nascha Mos v'lo Svara. We said, according to most of Amoraim, right? The Halach and Moshe Sinai that if you have most Stumin, right? If a Nazir became a Nazir, set aside a certain set of money for the Karbanos at the end of his Naziros, Chatas Ol and Shlamim, and then he proceeded to die before completing his Naziros, or for example, a woman set aside money and the husband was made for her Naziros, so the money is used, even though potentially it includes money of a Chatas. In this rare instance, all the money could be used for Olas Nadava, for Kates and Mizbeach, to be brought when the Mizbeach is batal, is not being, when no Karbanos are being brought on the Mizbeach. So the Amoraim yesterday restricted this to money. But however, if unspecified animal was set aside, or a bar of gold, let's say, or even beams, right, that are used for building, even though they're worth money, since they can't be readily sold so easily, so therefore they don't have the halacha of money, and therefore they can't. We assume there's a chatas mixed in there, and you can't use the money for olas in the davar for case of mizbeach. Elama'ata, if that's really true, Mos v'lo ofos should be also. If there was Mos that were stumim, that were unspecified, it should be also to exclude birds. If you had birds that were unspecified, it also should be like a behema, or it should be like a bar of gold. And you shouldn't be allowed to bring maybe they'll tell me it's true. Birds also, unspecified birds, right? Birds can't be used as a karbanos. Karbanos at the end of the Nazir are animals. However, potentially they could be sold for animals. So there's a halacha by kinin. We mentioned yesterday the halacha of kinin, which is a pair of birds, which is usually brought in 3 instances. In the case of a mitzora, a yoledis, and a zava, when they complete their rituals of purity after a 7-day period, they bring sometimes, some of the cases, at least by a mitzora and by yoledis, they bring one bird for a chatas, one bird for an ola, if they're poor, and a zava always brings a pair of birds. So you have to specify at some point which bird is for the chatas and which bird is for the ola. So either it can be done by l'kichas bailim, when the owners, right, buy the pair of birds, and they say this bird is for a chatas, this bird is for an ola. Or if they don't do that when they buy it, the Kohen, when he takes the birds and he designates one for a chatas and one for ola, that's when the kedusha goes on to the birds. So the Gemara says that's halacha we find by kinin. Amai hamos gemirin la. Right? We only learned the concept of right money, right? Most that are stumin, right? Those afterwards, right? We say could lose whatever potential kedusha of a chatas and go immediately to an olas nadava, right? But ofos, birds, if the owner, when he buys them, does not specify the chatas or an ola, so those birds are mixed together. It's unspecified birds. And unspecified birds, we don't have a halacha l'moshe over there. Like we're saying, by animals, birds would be similar. When they're unspecified, we don't know what they are. There's a potential, a suffix, whether the bird is a chatas or an ola. How could the Kohen go ahead and designate one for a chatas, one for ola. Potentially, the one he designated for a chatas could be the ola, and the one he designated for the ola could be a chatas. The top of Chav Zayim and Aleph, Amar Lei, so he said back to him, Ul-Tamayach, according to your reason, Chatas Nan, Shimon Galil Omer, Hevi Sholosh Behemos, V'lo Piresh. Shimon Galil says, if he brought three animals at the end of Naziros and he didn't specify which one is for which, Haruya L'Chatas Tikarav Chatas, L'Ola Tikarav Ola, L'Shlam Tikarav Shlam, he specified three animals. He didn't specify which are they for. So the animals that are offered for a Chatas, Ola, and Shlam are very different, right? A Chatas is brought from a female lamb. A lamb is basically a sheep which is in its first year of age. An ola is brought from a male lamb, a male keves, right, which is in its first year of age. And the shlamim is brought from, for a Nazir, the shlam of a Nazir is brought from a ram, which is a male sheep in its second year. So obviously the three animals are different animals. Amai, why should this be true? Amris, behema lav k'mifreshes dami. A behema is not like money, right? It's not like money, and therefore, since he didn't specify the owner, even though he separated, we know one has to be a chadas, one has to be an ola, one has to be shlamim. Nonetheless, it's behema is not like money, right? Behema, we said, a behema, there's a suffix over there. So even though, right, it makes sense that one should be for chadas, one for ola shlamim, there should be a suffix, and we shouldn't be allowed to use it for whatever it seems that it should be used for. Amar lei, so he said back to him, Hasan v'lakach v'asa amar rachmana. It says these cases are different, right? When it comes to the brakinim, the pair of birds, it says valaka. There's actually the word valakha. Now there's no pasuk valaka because usually it's by a woman. You'll let it to her zav valakha. She takes it asa, right? So there's two different ways of specifying which one is a chatas, which one is an ola. So valaka is referring to when the owners specify. Asa is when the kohen, when the bailim didn't specify, the owner specifies. Here also, when it comes to the animals, where he set aside three different animals, right here, even though he didn't specify, it's obvious. It's like he specified, because it's not possible for a chatas to be an ola and the ola to be a chatas, because the ola is from a male keves and the chatas is from a female keves, a female lamb. So therefore, it's like he specified. These cases are not good questions. So the Gemara says, Meisei Rav Hamnuna. Rav Hamnuna asked the following question. We had an opinion that there was one opinion that even though normally, right, an animal which is a tamima, does not have a mum, right, is not considered like money. However, if you have an animal which he set aside for his naziros, kamadas naziros, and it has a permanent blemish, it's like a stuma. It's considered to be something which is unspecified, and you use it like if he dies for olas ketzim mizbeach. Is that really true? Tashma, we're going to bring a proof that's not true from Raisa. Ketzad amru ha'ish megaleach al naziros aviv. This is a Mishnah later on where we talk about there are certain instances where a son and a father are both nazirim, and the father dies. Could the son use the karbanos that his father set aside for the end of his naziros, for the son's naziros, when he can finish his naziros, right? Because the father didn't need him anymore; he died. Could the son use them? So certain times he can, certain times he can't. When could he use it? Him and his father were nazirim. His father set aside money for his naziros, so mace, and then he died. Nazir. And then the son took the naziros after his father already died, and when he took the naziros, he promised to bring the karbanos that his father had set aside. Now, there's problems with the text over here, and the reading of this brayso conflicts heavily with the Mishnah on 38. On Lamed Amid Aleph, and therefore the art scroll really changes the words around here. So I'm going to read from the art scroll, even though the Gemara's text is a little different. I'm reading from the art scroll because they amend it based on different Rishonim. The Rush and Tosfos have a different version. So I'm going to read it from the art scroll. If that is the case, right? In that case, it works. He could. Again, this is not the text of the Gemara, but If you have an article, you can follow along. If he and his father were both Nazirim, the hifresh aviv most stumim, and his father set aside money, unspecified money, umeis. V'amar habein hareini megaleach al mos abba, and um, and the son said, right, he was already a Nazir. He was a Nazir before his father died, and then he said, in the middle of the Naziris, he didn't set aside money for the karbanos. He said, I'm going to use my father's money for my karbanos. Yiplu nedava. So that those monies should go to Nadava for case of Mizbeach. If you had a behema which is mefureshes, which is specified, Hakatas Tamos Ola Tikarav Ola Shlam Ikru Shlamim, right? Like we said before, if he specifies money and then he dies, any Nazir, right? So the Chatas Shemesu Bala, right? Tamos has to die. And the Ola and the Shlamim are brought as regular Ola and Shlamim. So this is in the Gemara. If you look in the Gemara, right, it just adds in word. Tosas and the Rosh add in word. They talk about a second case where they are both Nazirim at the same time. So if the money is stumos, you can use it for case of Mizbeach. If it was before Rashos, so then you have to use it, right, for the father's chiyuv, not the son's chiyuv, because the son was already a Nazir before his father died. Now the Brisa says Ola Yikruvu Ola Shlam Yikruvu Shlamim. I want to talk more about this in Iyun Ben Sion. According to the Art Scroll is themed throughout, even dating back from the Mishnah on Chav Dalam and Aleph, that if a woman is a Nazira and her husband is made for the Naziras, or someone is a Nazir and he dies before completing the Naziras, and he separated an Ola, Chadas, and Shlamim, so the Chadas Tamas, the Ola and Shlamim are brought as common Ola and Shlamim. What type of Ola and Shlamim are they brought? Because Art Scroll believes it's Ola's Nadava, and the Shlamim and Shalmei Nadava. I believe it's a Shalchova. It's not clear, it doesn't say which one. It's actually a Shalchova. It's part of your Naziris. It's an Ola and Shlamim of Naziris, not an Ola Nadava and a Shalmei Nadava. And there's different halachos based on that, which we talked about partially in Yud Ben Sion, but I'll elaborate on that more in Yud Ben Sion, why I believe different than Art Scroll. So the Gemara concludes its question, my love afilu balas mum. Right? It says any animal, right? Any animal that was set aside, right? Chatas Tamos, Ola Shlamim, Ola is Tikarav Ola, Shlam Tikarav Shlamim. Right? So even if it was and stumos, right? If it was set aside unspecified, the animals were set aside unspecified, right? So the halachah mashina applies. Yikru, right? Halachah mashina applies, and it falls l'nadava for kesem mizbeach. So it's talking about all animals, even, right? It should be talking about all animals, whether it's a balas mum, it has a mum, or even if it's a tmima. Afilu balas mum. So, and we just said before that a balas mum, right? A balas mum that halacha doesn't apply, right? I'm sorry. The fact that if it's mefurashos, right? So the chatas tamus, right? Why do we say if mefurashos? If it's specified, the chatas should die, right? If it's a balas mum, we had an opinion on Chav Vavam Beis. We had an opinion that if it has a mum, right? So it's treated as money, and therefore the halacha mashlis is going to apply. So the Gemara says, "Lo tamima." It only meant to say if you separated the chatas and it was a complete chatas, right? That could have been offered as a korban. The Gemara says, "Balas mum kustuma damia ma'ir mos." Why does it say money? Lema haisalo behema balas mum yipul nadava. Right? Why does it say if there's mos stumim, if there's money that's stumim, even if you should include also an animal, right? An animal that's a balas mum. Tell me the bigger chiddush, right? Even if it's a balas mum, it's like money because it needs to be sold. There's nothing you can do with it. Yipul nadava, it should be able to be brought as a nadava, right? Ketzim mizbeach hakanami balas mum lamai kiddush dami hainu mos. So what I'm saying is basically what it said. It says money. A balas mum, an animal that has a permanent blemish, can't be offered as a korban. So therefore, it's only kedusha, it's only thing. It has value, monetary value. You're have to going to promptly sell it. So therefore, it's like money. That was included when the Brisa said money. It included a balas mum. Meisiv Rava. Rava asked another question. Carbano, the carbano who yotze, vena yotze, the carbon aviv. We'll see there's going to be a long discussion over here comparing Nazirus to a regular case of chatas. Right? If both the father and son, not a Nazirus, are chayav a chatas for doing an avera, right? There's different types of averas. Let's say you ate chaylev, right? Forbidden fast from an animal. You're chayav a korban chatas if you did a b'shogeg. There's also chil Shabbos avodah zara. If you do that b'shogeg, right? You're chayav a korban chatas. So the father and the son both were chayav a chatas. So we're going to talk about this in a second and compare it to Nazirus also, because then the Nazirus, one of the korbanos, is the chatas also. Basically, carbano who yotze and yotze be korban aviv. You can only be yotze with your own korban for a chatas, and not the father, not the chatas of your father. For example, your father's chayav chatas, and he separated an animal, and he died. Right? You're also chayav chatas. You can't use your father's animal. Yachal lo yotze be karbano shel aviv shehifrish min akala chamura or min achamura al akala. Aval yotze be karbano shehifrish aviv min akala al akala min achamura al chamura. You might think it says be karbano, right? His korban, right? To exclude your father's korban. That's only if you did different averas, right? Your father did a chamura would be considered to be something like chil Shabbos or avodah zara b'shogeg, where if you did it b'mezid, right, did it on purpose, you have a more grave punishment. You'd have potentially kares, or if you did it with edim and hasra, you could be chayav skila, as opposed to chaylev, where if you did it on purpose, there's no more severe penalty that you're going to die for it. That's called kala. So let's say your father did a kala, he did chaylev, and you did Shabbos, or he did Shabbos, he did chaylev. But if you had the same avera, either both of you Shabbos or both of you chaylev, you might think you could be yotze with your father's korban. Talmud Lomar karbano. It says the word karbano twice. The karbano yotze and yotze be karbano shel aviv. Okay. Yachal yotze be karbano aviv behema shehefresh hafil min akala al akala min achamura al chamura. Sure, ein adam yagaleach behema aviv min zirus. You might think, which fine, we just established that it doesn't matter, even if you have the same gravity of your sin, right? Or korban chatas, so you can't use your father's korban, because the same thing by Nazir. So you can't, if the father and son are both Nazirim, and the father and the son became a Nazir during the father's lifetime, right? He can't use his father's korbanos. Aval yotze, sh'adam yotze magal avim Nazirus. Aval yotze behamos shehifresh avim min achamura al ka'ala min achala chamura. Sharei Adam Galeach Amos Aviv Minazirus. Bizman Shehain Stuman Bizman Shehain Furashan. However, right, you could be yotze with your korban father's chatas, even if you had different levels of sin. One was chaylev, one was Shabbos, right? Because there is an instance where you could, by Nazirus, could be yotze with your father's Nazirus, right? Like we said before, if the son becomes a Nazir after his father dies, he said, I'm a Nazir, and I'm a galeach al the karbanos that my father set aside. We're going to say it's only when they're stumin, when the father set aside unspecified money. Even a Nazirus, right? Even if he was makabel Nazirus after his father died, he said, I'm going to use my father. Karbanos, if they're already b'furashin, if the father he said, this is for a chat, this is for an old, this is for a shlam, he can't use it. But when it's stumin, he could use it. Talmud Lomar karbano. It says korban a third time, but karbano yotze and yotze be korban aviv. So therefore, he can't use his father's money for a korban chatas. Even if the money was unspecified, he can't use. But his father's chatas is unspecified. He can't use it. We learned from that from Nazirus, from karbano. Even though by Nazirus technically we're going to see on Daf Lamed it could be done. Here it can't be done. Now, this is the middle of a long brisa over here. We're going to talk more about being yosei with your father's chatas or not. I'm going to stop over here because it's the middle of a long discussion. So this is where we're going to stop Daf Chav Zayin over here. We're in the middle of a discussion over here, so stay tuned tomorrow for the continuation of the sugya. I want to talk today in Yud Ben Sion. It's not really new to Daf Chav Zayin. It's something we've been talking about since Daf Chav Dalid. If your Nazirus is terminated in the middle, either the husband was Mayfair, his wife's Nazirus, or the Nazir died before completing his Nazirus. So if he specified a Chatas Ola and Shlam, the Chatas Tamus, Chatas dies, and the Ola, Tikar of Ola, and Shlam Tikar of Shlamim. Now, Ola Tikar of Ola, Shlam Tikar of Shlamim, is that B'Torah's Ola's Nadava and Shlami Nadava, which is basically like, I can any day wake up in the morning and decide to donate to the base of Mikdash out of my being a nice person, a will, an olis nedava, or a shalmi nedava, which is basically a free will. I just decide to give a present to the Beis Hamikdash. Or when we say the ola is tikar ola, shlam tikar shlamim, that's medin chova of the Nazirus. The ArtScroll has been assuming all along. I've noted this, in passing. It's been assuming all along that we're talking about a nadava, a free will offering, not part of the chovas nazirus. But I will explain why I believe that it is part of the chovas nazirus. Iyad Mension coming up next.